So I want to close off this gorgeous engagement with the Audre Lorde Archive and Pat Parker Archive by bringing in another piece of the Audre Lorde Archive that I taught in the first week of classes at the university I teach at. So some of you might be familiar with the Los Angeles Review of Books essay that came out a couple of months ago that basically documents June Jordan and Audre Lorde's falling out over Audre Lorde's Zionism. So Audre Lorde, the essay basically discusses how June Jordan could have possibly had maybe a much more established career in comparison to Audre Lorde if it wasn't for her firm political positions and anti-colonial positions. And I chose to teach this essay at this political moment because I wanted to get my students to think about the possibility of not necessarily over-identifying themselves as the June Jordan in the political situation, but instead identifying with Audre Lorde in terms of having to be called in and being held to account, eventually finding herself at the right side of history. And trying to get them to think about where we get these visions of political purity from, and also confronting, maybe learning a lesson from Audre Lorde about confronting our own complicity in the political positions that we take. Because the essay ends eventually with thinking about how Audre Lorde chose to leave these communications of falling out with June Jordan over the question of Palestine, and that possibly being a reparative move for her to confront her own past complicity. And I guess like in our current political moment, a year into the genocide, that is perhaps one of the kind of political demands that we can ask from ourselves and each other, which is confronting our complicity. Here I want to just share. I guess, Audre's words that kind of reflect her complexity as well. February 6, 1968. Dear Pat, I put the letterhead on just to show off. How do you like it? Not only have I become computer literate, are you ready for the language? But even computer artistic. You see, if we had modern telephone hookups, we could communicate directly screen to screen. Tomorrow, the stars. But everything is so speeded up anyway. It feels like a piece of me is always moving in one and a quarter time to everyone else's one. Do you feel like that? And then other times for the instant, you don't want its slow motion to forever. Listen, love, it's not like being in a relationship with someone younger than myself, although you are. It's like being in a relationship with a beloved part of my own self. It's always been so difficult to love you from afar, and so costly to come in close. I put a lot of the stuff I learned about you and me into eye to eye. I wish I had those unfinished letters, Patty, especially from Washington. I thought about you a lot that weekend, sitting up in the Berlin cold, and then Yoli's letter saying she'd seen you and you were going back home to deal with a lump in your breast. And then you called. Whatever I have, know that is useful to you is yours. Most of all, to hear from you when you speak and believe you when you are silent. So, my friend, as you see, they're all disgusting liars, but we can use them, the doctors, I mean. Of course, they don't tell you how much it's going to hurt and rush us out of the hospital while we're still euphoric from the damn anesthesia, and then when the pain hits, it's, oh, I must have done something wrong. This spider-up-the-wall routine standing close to the wall helps a lot, and so does always elevating your elbow when you sit down, on the back of a chair, or even with your hand on your hip. It helps the lymph drain, and it is a good habit to get into for lots of reasons, like exercise, posture, muscular tension, etc. Pat, I respect your decision about chemotherapy. Any decision we make about our own bodies after considering facts is the right decision. Our decisions do not kill us. They are you and me making a move for life. What kills us, oh my sister, is indecision and despair and turning ourselves over and heeding to any of those others, well-meaning and otherwise. You are always so sure they have the right answers. You are a survivor, Pat. And that battle on a physical level is now braided into our lives. But the war is not alien now, is it? You and me, we've been fighting all our lives. Baby, 5 years is very long and also very short. It's a real freak out to see it as a possible measure on all we want to do, isn't it? But it does get easier, I swear it. But it might get a little harder first. It's one of the weapons of the motherfuckers. It's very useful for them having us see our diseases are failing. And the weak are sex at that. Check on Moisha Dayan in the cancer journals. We're in a fucking war, baby. We're warriors and we got scars. None of us live for 300 years, and we sure aren't going to be the first human beings to die of absolutely nothing. The fact we're writing these letters to each other is a triumph, Pat. I feel it, and I want you to feel it too. You've been doing what you came to do, sweetheart, and I think you changed the world. That's the kind of thing we both got to deal with. We've managed better than most, old girl. Cancer is not a punishment or a demerit. It's a fucking scourge that's getting worse because there are no real priorities for its getting better because its very existence is big business as well as cost-intensive population control. You've got to root that one out, sweetheart. It has nothing to do with your failure because that feeling comes around a lot and it's really destructive. It's never been that simple anyway, Patty. Bullshit on it's our anger that caused our cancers. How much strontium-90 and racism have you absorbed today? I feel it's my anger that has helped me keep me alive, and what the hell else are we supposed to erect against their homophobic, racist, sexist poison? A submissive grin? We were never meant to survive, so under the circumstances, girlfriend, I think we've done pretty well, give or take a bad spell or two. Neither one of us is lying in the gutter, gutted with no mind to be elsewhere, no work to do, and no one caring. And each one of us could have been, and you know it, and I know it, so let's not kid ourselves. Of course, none of that makes it any easier, and some days it's still like hitting the brick wall at 10 miles per hour and no windshield. People don't know how to treat us. Give them time. Just make it perfectly clear that learning how is their responsibility, not yours. Anastasia and Cassidy, you have to help deal with their feelings. Maddie from the co-op, you do not. The ups and downs and changes go on for a long time, and that's very good. Marty's going to love you no matter what, Goose, and as you get less tender and sore, I guarantee that you will discover some interesting erotic possibilities that are bound to delight. More on this subject, one dear to my heart, of course, in the next letter written Vanishing Ink. Think of yourself as a one-breasted Dahomean Amazon. It helps counterbalance the sense of loss. I'm glad you're getting into your body. She's different and she's yours. Love her. It's a good thing you're going to Antioch. By the time you get this, you will have returned. I hope it was a good experience. I remember going to Texas 3 weeks after my mastectomy and how it felt like a triumph, but very shaky. Good luck. Andrea has come and gone, so as I reread your letter in this conversation, it's freaky around time because, as I said, I have this feeling so often of fluidity and swiftness as well as the variability of happenings. I thank you for the love you sent by her. Adenocarcinoma is a tumor arising in the lining tissue, inner or outer of a gland, slower moving than lymphomas, which arise in the gland itself. Generically, has a better prognosis than infiltrating duct carcinoma, the most common kind of breast cancer. If you develop chemoreactions besides lethargy, which you will have to start learning how to make terms with anyway, the hardest thing for me is still the lessening energies. Ask your doctor about vitamin C therapy, massive doses of which seem to have good effects. You might also check out a holistic doctor because there are biologicals you can take in addition to chemo, which counteract the side effects. I also want you to initiate a conversation with your chemotherapist about adriamycin if that is an ingredient in your soup along with 5-fluor, and its effect on heart muscle and whether that's anything you need to be concerned about. About Sister Cheryl, I said make contact because I hoped you two might have something to say to each other. Plus, since she's the editor of Conditions, I know she can use your input into her consciousness of what international is supposed to be. Plus, I have a weakness, as you will remember, believing that we can all save each other if we really try. And I hear you say already, didn't you learn anything at all from the Felicia fiasco? And when will you ever learn anyway? Cheryl is just too far gone, and I guess I just never will. Learn, that is. Darling child, what happened? I get your drift. We were both very vulnerable women, Pat, and the fact that we use our vulnerabilities to make our greatest strength makes us powerful women, not failures. I love you. And in case you have ever tried to reach me and I could not hear you, these words are in place of the dead air still between us. And yes, you do not need to cry, but there's time enough for that. Just make sure that when it comes, you know what it's about, because sometimes it will masquerade as fury or depression or the kicked fender or the state of the world, not to mention Cassidy's muddy boots or Doug Williams' 5 consecutive possessions. Nah, never thought I could change, huh? Europe was hard and terribly cold, but very good in a lot of ways. The treatments worked very well for me, and I'm in better shape than I've been in a few years. I feel in a holding pattern now as far as metastases are concerned, and fighting hard to keep it that way for as long as possible. But Europe was good also because I could never have done it the way I did it without Gloria, and it also gave us a chance to re-examine our relationship in an atmosphere removed from the usual pressures and distortions, yet at the same time not devoid of meaningful work. And it was in Berlin that we first lived together for extended periods of time, that beautiful spring of 1984, when the doctors here were burying me and I was refusing to believe I had liver cancer and the Afro-German girls were blowing my mind to brilliant pieces. So this relatively calmer time gave us a chance to review that whole time in perspective and learn some very important things about ourselves and each other, as well as about being Black women together in a white European world. I love living here in the Caribbean. It feels like I've come home, and St. Croix, where I've developed a community over the last 7 years of coming in and out of it, feels particularly possible. But there are lots of culturally shocking changes that I'm learning to swing with. This is where I want to be, but the colonialism is yet another battlefront shaping up, as if I would have it any other way. The beaches, the sea, the coconuts and the sun, as well as the power outages and the high prices. I wish you could come visit sometime. Remember, it is a place you can come and be quiet. It is deep and it is wonderful with Gloria, which doesn't mean it isn't sometimes rocky. It is still a hard time for Frances, who is putting her life together in a different way. I miss her, but I am very happy and pleased to know I deserve whatever I can harvest. You and Marty must talk honestly about your terrors and your expectations and your fears now, not next year when it might be so much harder. Processed foods are those with the life nuked or chemicalized out of them. When you come right down to it, cooking is processing, so use your own discretion. Anything with those weird sounding alphabetical preserver chems are out. Canned tomatoes are very high in acid and not very good for you in general. Neither is milk except unnuked goatses, but then that's me. Dare I say answer soon? So much still to say, but I'm wearing out. Going to Anguilla for 2 weeks, 2/14/29. Would love to have a letter when I come home. That number there will be 809-492-2351. My love to you and Marty and Anastasia, Audrey. Thank you.